So we're gonna have a discussion with Justin Compton. Okay. And Justin, I'm gonna just briefly so Justin and I have known each other for quite some time. Justin, for people that don't have a background in bodybuilding, Justin was essentially a very high level bodybuilder. Like and I competed in bodybuilding, right? But I remember watching you from like a distance, and it's like you were kind of like on the radar, and then Chivers, like this dude went like I remember there were like pictures in Kentucky because that's where you're originally from. But then like
Yep.
they released, and it was like this transformation, and then ever since then it was kind of like totally crazy. We ended up linking up. We've done work together. You currently essentially helped me out with my entire diet, but I want to tell one story real quick. So so you were competing in the Arnold. I know you won the Arnold in Asia, but you were competing in the Arnold in North America, which is in Columbus, Ohio, which is where I'm at, which is also where Westside was. And I treated Louis Simmons for a long time. And I remember I would tell Louis, hey, I got this buddy that's a bodybuilder. I'm like, this dude, it's crazy to see this guy. Because I was treating you at the time. I'd be like, dude, this is insane. Right. And I remember Louis would be like, oh, like, you can't be that big, blah, blah, blah. So you were coming in town for treatment. Okay. And I remember it exactly because I would go to Westside on Fridays, but Louis wanted to do a video, a recording of specialty equipment on a Thursday. So he was like, hey, can you come on a Thursday? And I'm like, yeah. And so I told him, I was like, hey, my buddy is in town from Friday to Sunday because you were driving back to Kentucky. Right. And
Yeah.
I remember Louis was like,
No,
well,
actually, I think I flew because I think that was 2016. I was in Florida. That was when my elbow was really flared up.
okay.
But yeah,
Okay. So
either way, yeah,
I,
it was a weekend.
I just remember that yeah, you're right. You are right. You're right. Okay. Because I remember Louis was like, well, if you guys get time, bring him to Westside. And Louis never came to the gym on Sunday. I'm pretty sure this is a Sunday, this picture that I'm going to show. Right. And I'll never forget because I treated him and he's like, you got to bring this guy then. Like, if this dude's so, like, if he's so big, bring him. And I'll never forget, he was blown away by you. Like, he talked about you. Like I remember he was like, you got to get that guy bands and let me know how the bands are working for this guy. Like, and he was like, I'd never forget. He was like bodybuilding so much more advanced than powerlifting. He's like, I've never seen anybody this big. He was blown away. And that says a lot because the Arnold Classic is in Columbus, so he would see a lot of bodybuilders. So I'm gonna share a picture. So this is the picture. This is you and Louis in front of Westside. Do you remember when this was?
I was 2016. I think we were around, that was in the summer of 2016. So I was probably sitting around 275, 280 pounds there. Wow.
Yeah, and just I've showed people this picture. I need to text you this picture because I
Yeah,
thought
because
that
I
you
don't
would
have
have.
it.
Okay, because I just remember people like I would show people that and they would be like, because they'd be like, oh, so and so. And I would be like, well, like, do you know who Justin Compton is? And they're like, no, not by name. And I would show them this picture and they'd be like, oh my, like, this is crazy. Right.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so long story short, I'm telling Shivers this, like, hey, like, because we're talking about like programming, essentially, like, what's the difference between programming and what's the difference between training? And then also like what's the difference between programming and what's the difference between treatment? Because we have a lot of therapists, right? And so it's funny, like just in email exchanges back and forth with you over the past couple of weeks, it's like, okay, well, Justin knows how to program, but he also knows how to train. And then it's like seeing how you work. So like you have a strategy behind what you're doing. And so that's why we were talking and I was like, man, it would be great to have Justin on to just kind of take us through like what does it look like when you program, let's say, and I picked like the biceps, right? Because I feel like but we can talk about how you program the training for anything. But that's why we essentially wanted to have you on is just to have this discussion.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I think if people listen, they pay attention to like the way that I'm going to explain this, a lot of these principles are going to apply to other muscle groups too. I mean, they may have to do a little bit of outside thinking, to figure out what exercises to use, but like rather than me going through like, and I am going to go through specific exercise selection, but I'm going to pick why I'm going through this and why I'm choosing certain angles. So do you want me to just dive right on into this, or is there anything specific, or how do you want me to do this?
You have the
Yeah,
floor,
it's what it,
Justin. Go ahead.
it's you, man.
Okay, so I was a guy. I first want to state, you saw that picture. I obviously had big arms, and I was a guy who had what I would say more of a balanced physique prior. I think as I progressed, I did become a little bit more limb dominant. So I think it is safe to say that I do have good bicep genetics, but you don't grow a muscle because you have genetics. That's not how it works. You still got to know how to train. You got to know how to program. You got to have your mind to muscle connection. There's a lot of things that's going to go into this. Now, when I was younger, when I said I thought I had just a balanced average physique, I'm not going to say any specific programs or anyone that I followed. I did follow select people and the things that they would tell me to do. And I did basic, this is where I knew how to work out, but I didn't know how to program. So I'd go to the gym and I would train. And I had mind to muscle. I knew form wasn't a no problem. I wasn't sloppy with my form. And I had decent arms. I wouldn't say that they were like Olympia level or phenomenal, but like they were good. I think at 21 years old, I had like 20-inch arms, cold. So they weren't bad by any means. Now, going from 20 inches to 24 and a half, what you guys saw in that photo, that's a big difference. I mean, 4.5 inches may not sound like a lot, but it's a lot on your arm. Well, that's it. But it's a lot of other areas too, but that's not where we're going with this. So,
It's funny how we all thought that, but nobody said anything until you.
yeah, that's a very large scale in other areas, but for your arms, it's still a really large scale too. So like just to go from like a 21 to a 22, you're going to look like a completely different person with just an extra inch on your arms. So probably when I was around 20, I'm going to say 23, maybe going into 24 years old, is when I started taking my training to like a different level. I wasn't going to the gym to just go to the gym and get a pump. I wasn't going to the gym just to get a little bit stronger. I was going to the gym with intent and purpose. And my purpose at that time was to become a professional bodybuilder and become the best professional bodybuilder that I could be. Now, that doesn't happen by accident. If you look at any of the top level guys, sure, we have some genetically elite, but I mean, take people call Phil Heath the gift because he has gifted genetics. Yeah, of course, he's got good genetics, but he also knew how to train. He had Hahn in his corner, to tell him what to do and how to do it and everything. So he didn't just build that physique just because he had good genetics and went to the gym. He knew exactly what he was doing. And I think that same rule applies to any elite level bodybuilder. I think there's a reason why you see some guys with good genetics that only go a certain distance because a lot of people don't understand the intensity that you're going to have to train at, which we're going to talk, I want to very clearly go over as well. And they don't understand volume and they don't understand the whys. Why am I doing this in this specific order at this specific angle? And that's kind of the stuff I want to get into with this. So I like when it comes to bicep training, I typically will choose 5 movements. And I'm going to explain those 5 movements. They don't have to be the exact same movement, but again, this comes down to more angles and also um, order of execution, if for lack of better words. So I'm going to pick 5 movements here, and I'm going to do a regular standard range of motion. I'm going to do a shortened range of motion. I'm going to do a lengthened range of motion. And then because your biceps is not just going up and down, you got to think your biceps is still working as your hand moves and your hand planes. So I'm going to be doing hammers. I'm going to be doing reverse. We'll save that. We'll kind of talk about that a little bit more towards the end. But one thing, warming up. So I typically will do anywhere between 3 to 4 warm-up sets. And the way that I like to do my warm-up sets is I'm going to pick the first exercise that I'm going to be doing that day. Like if I'm going to be doing preacher curls, I'm not going to go warm up on dumbbell. I'm going to warm up on what I'm actually going to be hitting. So I find it to be pointless to go over and warm up on something that you're not actually going to be doing, and then throwing and submitting yourself to heavy weight on something that you're not prepared to do. So whatever your first opening exercise is going to be, And I'm going to offer a couple of options on that in a second. You know, the way I like to do the warm ups is I'll probably start with maybe less than 50% of the weight that I'm actually going to use, maybe less than that. And I'm going to aim between like 12 to 15 reps. Nothing fancy about this at all. Literally, you're just controlling the weight. And I guess I should probably go into form as well. I don't believe in the sloppy ass form that we see in a lot of bodybuilders. If your lower back is moving forward, your lower back's moving forward, your upper back, you're leaning, you know, your elbows is driving forward. Yeah, is the biceps getting recruited? Yes, but so is like 14 other muscles. You're using weight that you don't need to use, and you're putting yourself at a high chance of injury. I mean, we have a chiropractor here on the line, so he'll tell you that, like, say I want to curl 100 pounds for strict reps, or I want to curl 200 pounds with sloppy form. When I throw that 200 pounds on, when I start hoisting it at my hips and hyperextending my back just to lift the weight up, that's not going to be good for my lower back. That's
Mhm.
just not ideal. And I can't think anyone that's going to say that that's a good idea to try to move more weight just for the sake of doing it. So the biggest thing is drop the ego, forget all that shit, drop your ego, and lift accordingly to what your body can handle. So I will start with a full range of motion. Either I'm going to go with a preacher machine. You could technically do a preacher curl. I personally prefer a machine, or you can do like a standing barbell. It's going to be a strict, like a full range of motion, strict form on it. This is going to be your full range of motion. We're not getting into lengthened or shortened positions yet. That's going to be the first exercise for a specific reason, because the next exercise I want to do, I want to put the bicep in a shortened position. Now, how am I going to do that? Not a lot of gyms have this machine. So I'm going to offer some alternatives for some guys. And I actually have a video as well somewhere on my phone that I could probably send you all. And I have learned ways to modify, because the first show that I ever competed in, I won my first open show in 2010. I trained in a gym that did not have a barbell. So sometimes you have to learn how to improvise. All they had was machines, and I was still the best bodybuilder in Kentucky at that time. And I did it in a gym with, again, no barbells. The dumbbells went to 100 pounds, which is nowhere near what I was capable of using, just generally speaking, not on biceps, but generally speaking. So back to this shortened range of motion. LA Fitness always has this machine, and it's one of the only gyms that has it. But again, you may or may not. So essentially, you're going to get into this machine, and your arm is going to be like kind of propped up here. So when your arm goes over your head, your bicep becomes into a shortened position. I personally find that that particular movement has probably put more size on my arms than anything else. I can truly feel it. Like when I say I can feel it, the mind to muscle connection, when I get off that machine, that pump is insane. Now, I train in a gym that don't have one of those. So what do? I improvise. So a couple of things that people can do. Again, shortened position, you're trying to get your humerus above, like basically above like the parallel line of the floor. So you're not trying to go perpendicular. You don't got to go like above your head. I mean, technically that would work, but it's going to be very awkward. So if you can get your bicep up here into a shortened position, we're good. So a couple ways to do that. One, you can just simply take cables and go up high, and you can pull from one arm at a time. I call it a front double bicep curl because your arms and your elbows are going to be elevated. That wouldn't work, but you also got to be a little bit more strict with your form, because I see people that like to cheat when they do that. And to be fair, when I get going too heavy, I tend to. And that's when I'm like, okay, you need to back off the weight. Now, another little thing that I did, this is a real major pain in the butt to set up, but it works and it mimics this machine that I'm telling you guys about. It mimics it very well. There is some old school Nautilus machines that, like, watch Dorian Yates' Blood and Guts. He's actually using one of them, like where he's sitting here and the machine pulls from here. Again, that bicep is up and it's elevated in a shortened position. I don't even know if they knew about that stuff back in the 90s, but they knew it worked. And it did work. They just didn't know the whys behind it probably at that time, with, hypertrophy and bodybuilding in general. But that being said, I've actually taken a cable stack, and if you have a preacher, not the preacher machine, but just a preacher bench, and it's not bolted down, I'll actually pull it over to the cable stack, kind of move the seat out of the way. and I'll use the actual bench, like where you would normally like lay the back of your arm on. And I'm going to actually put the cable up here. So I'm putting my arm, so the bench is here. And I'm essentially curling from this position with cables. It's going to mimic that machine. It's going to put your bicep in that shortened position. So that would be number two that I'm going to go with on biceps. Now, for the third bicep movement, I'm going to shift gears. I'm going to go into a lengthened position. Now, how are you going to get into a lengthened position? Just for the people out there, I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that's hearing this and they're like, this is dumb. Like, there's a lot of rookies out there that's going to hear this that don't know what some of this means. So I'm sorry if I'm boring some of the people. But like to get into a lengthened position, the easiest way is the incline dumbbell curl. But I want to be specific with that. You don't need to be at like a 45-degree angle. You can be at like a 60-degree angle because the whole point is to get this bicep, or sorry, to get the humerus to go slightly behind your rib cage just a little bit. You're essentially stretching this arm out this direction some. But the key, and I'm going to scoot back just a little bit so you guys can see on camera what I'm doing here. Like when people do this movement, like I'll have like you're going to be laying back on your incline. I don't want to see this elbow driving forward. This is defeating the purpose. So the elbow is going to stay down the whole time. So you're curling from here. You're not getting this big drive up forward using your front delta on moving it. Again, the whole point is to keep it into that lengthened position. So you're training down here with the bicep. So you're probably going to be using a significantly less weight than what you think that you need for that movement. I actually learned that how to do that movement properly, I guess I should say, is I watched an old school Kai Green video. And as if you guys know, there's been a little beef between me and him lately as far as like some words exchanged. But like, I don't really have anything against the guy. He said some stupid stuff. But he is a very knowledgeable guy, and I did take note to it, and I always give credit where credit's due. And Kai was the guy that I watched this video and I learned it from. And I remember he was actually demonstrating it with a follower of his or a fan of his. And he told the guy to go grab dumbbells. The guy grabs 40s. And you could tell by the look on his face that he's just like, nah, you tell he wasn't having it. The guy obviously does it completely wrong. And he goes, are you here to lift weights or are you here to build big biceps? Which one do you want to do? And he goes, put those 40s back, go grab 25s. I'm going to show you how to do this the right way. He's like, it's not about how much weight you're moving, it's about how you're stimulating that muscle. And I learned that, and I don't go past 30 or 35, and that's coming from a professional bodybuilder. In my prime, at my peak, probably a 45. Probably heavies I would have went on that. Because if you're keeping your elbow back like that, it certainly does restrict the range of motion. Again, the bicep is going to be short. So I think those three movements, as like I said, full range, shortened, lengthened, those are staples in every bicep workout. I do not think that you should do a bicep workout and expect maximum efficiency without those three things in there. So that leads me on to get into the next two exercises that I like to choose. These can be done with cables. If you're lucky enough to have like one of the barbells to do it, that works, but dumbbells never fail. So we're going to go with a dumbbell hammer curl. You want a crossbody, you want to go straight on, you want to use it on a preacher, doesn't matter. Hammer curl. Because your hammer curl is going to target a little bit more your brachialis. It's going to incorporate your forearm in there. And it's going to look really funny if a guy has, like, if you look back at that photo, John can throw it up as reference when you guys do the editing on this. You look back at that photo, it's going to look really weird if you see a guy with giant biceps and no forearm. Or better yet, you got a tall peak here and you don't have thickness to go with that. And if you look at my arm, I had all three. Everything was there because that was always a staple in my routine. And that's something that I also learned at a very young age. And then the last thing I like to do for biceps is I like to perform a reverse curl, preferably on the easy bar because a lot of guys, especially the heavily muscle guys, the smaller guys can probably get away with this, but just due to mobility issues. And John will tell you, like, big guys, we all suffer from some form of mobility. Like the muscle tissue is going. That's why you don't see 300-pound MMA guys, right? You don't see giant bodybuilders getting in the cage because they're about to get hammered and they don't want that. Again, trying to get a 300-pound bodybuilder into a jiu-jitsu move is going to be easy for the skilled guy. It's going to be very, very hard for the bodybuilder to do that. So again, um, damn, I just threw myself way off when I was talking about that.
Reverse curl.
Reverse curls, yes. So I like to use the easy bar. It's easier on my wrist because when I do a straight bar and I have to force my hand to go all the way around, I find that my pronator does not want to go all the way around. I'm putting it in a position that it does not like to be in. And maybe that could be something that I just simply need to work on as my own mobility. But I'll notice that my wrist will kind of start hurting. So I use an easy bar to finish this workout off. And when I do it, I don't kind of limp wrist it as I'm pulling up. I try to keep my arm straight or keep my wrist straight as I'm pulling this up. And that's going to target, the top of your forearm, your brachialis. So you're still getting your bicep in there. You're hitting it from a different angle, a completely different perspective, and you're recruiting different muscle fibers. If you're getting all 5 of those exercises in, you're not leaving anything on the table. Like you have annihilated that muscle. And that brings me to one other topic here that needs to be discussed, and that's volume. How much? Like this is part of your programming as well. Now, this can be a very subjective topic, especially when it comes to bodybuilding. Whenever I'm going to keep this YouTube friendly on this. So, natural versus enhanced. Clearly, the enhanced guy is going to be able to handle more volume. Like that just kind of speaks for what it is, right? So, if you're a natural guy, you're probably not going to be doing 25 sets per bicep. It's going to be very counterproductive for you. Your body cannot recover from that. If anything, you may actually get weaker and you may get smaller by doing that. So you have to monitor your own biomarkers. And this is something that I have a conversation with my clients. And I always have this conversation right out of the gate. It's the first check in. And I say, hey, I'm going to start you out with high volume. And I need your feedback. Because if you're recovering, we're going to stay there. If you're not recovering from it, we're going to back it off. Because I don't see the point in just drilling someone into the ground and essentially going backwards, potentially causing rhabdo, causing all these issues that is unnecessary in order to get the job done. Some people get away with doing one working set per exercise, and that seems to be a commonality in today's time. For me, that didn't work. It did not work. Granted, I was an enhanced bodybuilder the vast majority of my career. I did compete natural for a few years, but like I was enhanced on the back end of it. And that's when I noticed, like between the enhancements and being able to utilize that extra volume and frequency, my biceps exploded from that. The principles that I just explained as far as which exercises, I've been doing that since like 2012. Like I've been following those exact same principles for a very, very long time. And it was very productive to me as well. So back to when it comes back to the volume subject, this is something that I personally prefer to do about 15 to 21 working sets. That's for biceps. And then the same goes for triceps because my body handles it, it tolerates it well. I'm able to recover, but that's not going to be the case for every single person. Like, for example, you, Michael, you being a chiropractor, one of my really good friends is a chiropractor, and he's close friend of mine. You may know the name. Do you know a guy named Mike Rice?
No, I do not.
Probably not. Mike is one of the best chiropractors in the Atlanta. I'm going to go on a limb just because I personally know him and he's done a lot of work for me over the years. I got to say that Mike has got to be like maybe the number one guy that I've ever had in touch. But I also know the physical demand that it takes for a job like that. You're not punching a keyboard all day. You're a chiropractor. You're physically moving people. You're lifting people. You're putting yourself in positions. So therefore, when you're doing that, you're wearing your own body down. You're not going to be able to recover in the gym with the same volume as the sponsored athlete who gets to sit around, eat, sleep, watch TV, work out, and that's his only job, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Same thing for like a guy who has manual labor, whether you're in a factory, whether you're in a construction job, whatever that is, your body is simply not going to take the same beating as your favorite fitness influencer who's getting paid 6 figures to just eat, sleep, and work out. So that's something that has to be taken into consideration because we all live different lifestyles. Age plays a big role. I can say right now, when I was 25 and I'm about to be 38, I can't do the volume that I did at 25. Granted, I'm 38 on TRT and I was 25 and I was fully enhanced. That's that's not comparing the same human being at all. But it doesn't matter. I have a different circumstance now and I've had to adapt to that. So 12 to 15 sets is my top. Like anything more than that, I'm going to start having elbow pain. I'm going to burn out before the end of the workout's actually completed. So like those last two exercises, I may not even feel them if I'm trying to do more volume. If I'm trying to do 4 or 5 sets, or if I'm just trying to throw in extra exercises. And I personally, when it comes to the extra exercises, if it deviates from those principles, I don't even do them. Like I feel no reason to do them. Like I just feel like I'm just adding volume in, adding junk in that just simply is just because you get an extra little bit more blood flow, a little bit more pump, it doesn't mean you're actually producing results on the table. Because if we all took a band and we did 100 rep sets of bicep curls with a band, we're going to have a 10 times greater pump than if we're in the gym. At 100 reps is really going to gorge the blood into the muscle. But is it going to be building tissue? Probably not. Is it going to be doing other things for you? Yes. But as far as like actual hypertrophy and building muscle, that's not going to be the way to go, but you're still going to get that good pump. So that's why people also need to differentiate. Just because you had a hell of a pump does not always mean that you're growing muscle, and then vice versa. Just because you didn't get a skin splitting pump doesn't mean that you had an ineffective workout at the same time. So that leads me to what I'm going to say the last topic before you guys have some questions here is going to be the intensity level. I personally like to take things to failure. And when I say true mechanical failure, a lot of people don't get this. I see it all the time in the gym, but I don't say anything because I don't know those people. I do what I do, and that's called mind my own business. Like if somebody don't ask my help, they don't ask my advice, I don't offer my advice because they don't want my advice. Um, it's just like if I'm doing something and you don't need to tell me how to do it better unless I ask. So I mind my own business. But sometimes I'll have clients send me videos and I'm just like, that's not failure, man. You had 3 more in the tank. You had more. I expect greater things out of you. And I will tell them that. And I'm not telling them that to be a dick. I'm telling them that to motivate them to be the best that they can possibly be. And it's kind of the same when I get a chance to train with people one on one. Sometimes, seldomly, I'll see guys. I'm like, hey, rack the weight, dude. Like you've already failed, and you're on your 14th partial. Stop. And then sometimes I'm like, hey, bro, like, what are you doing, man? Like, is that a warm up set for you? Because that clearly wasn't heavy. Like that, you did not push yourself. So going to what I call true mechanical failures. So let's say we're talking bicep. I'm going real slow on this last rep, but I got the rep. I got a full range of motion. I know I can't get another one. In my head, in reality, I know I can't do it, but that doesn't mean that the set's over. I will slowly control the eccentric down and I will make my best effort. Maybe I get 10% range, 20% range, 30% range, and I'll hold that static hold for just a split second. And then I'm like, okay, that is my failing point. And that's where I feel like a lot of guys short themselves because it burns, it hurts a little bit, like, but that's part of it. If you can't accept a little bit of pain, and it's not pain like as in not the pain that you see in your office, it's a different kind of pain. Like you have to enjoy this type of pain, the muscular pain, soreness behind it. Like you can't be a good bodybuilder, not be a little bit twisted in the head to enjoy having this. So, that's where muscular failure comes in. And that's where muscular failure in volume sometimes will not always go hand in hand. That's why I say you should go to muscular failure and then adjust your volume accordingly. Because I wouldn't want to see you do 30 sets with 5 reps in the tank on every one of them. Like you didn't do anything at that point. You didn't accomplish anything. You got a good pump in the gym. You could take some Instagram photos, cool, whatever. But as far as bettering your physique, no. I would much rather see you do 5 all-out working sets to the point that you feel like you're going to vomit and you know that you left nothing on the table. So get those failure sets in and then establish how much volume that you can handle on top of being able to have strict form and failure. So once that's done, I feel like if you can adhere to that, are you going to have big biceps in 2 weeks? No. But if you put a tape measure on your arms today and you can lock your diet in, make sure that your diet is right, that means 365 days of the year if you're a bodybuilder. That does not mean 5 days a week and party on the weekend. So if you're a bodybuilder and your diet is locked in, and doesn't matter if you're natural or enhanced, if you were to put a tape on your arms today and you follow that setup for 1 year, I would love to see. I mean, you guys, anyone watching this, you guys can DM me. I would love to actually see what your girth measurement would be after 1 year of doing this. And you can apply this, and you should apply the same rules to tricep training as well. Like, obviously results are going to vary. The enhanced guy is clearly going to get a little bit bigger arms than the guy who's been training 10 years natural. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to make progress natural or enhanced. The same muscle building process is still taking place.
And so for the tricep, when you say the same principles, you mean warm up, full range, short range, long range, two extras, and
Usually
then
the two extras that I will add in on triceps, and John's actually one of the driving factors behind one of these. So when I would do stuff like a close grip bench press or skull crusher, I had a really bad habit of just using my elbows as a hinge unit. And like literally, this would be it. But when he kind of explained to me how, and I can't believe I didn't know this at this time, but I genuinely didn't know. And we're never too old to learn. You can always
of
learn
course.
from other people. But where your tricep attaches, like in your scapula, if that's not moving, so like when I do skulls, I'm trying to get this here. So I'm not always just doing this. Sometimes I'm allowing that elbow to move with it as well. Same thing like when I'm doing a close grip bench press. Like I used to sit here and do a close grip, like when I was younger, like literally, it was basically like this. It was like I was doing a push down from my chest. I wasn't allowing my elbows to move at all. Shoulder blades locked in, humerus bone locked in. The only thing moving was the elbow. And I found that that ended up doing two things. One, it limited my tricep growth, and two, it made my elbows hurt all the time.
I was just
So
gonna say, is that why you were seeing John for elbow pain?
that probably had a little bit to do with it, yes. So
and
I
and
have,
and then that's when you made the modification.
yeah, yeah. So like I changed the way that I do skull crushers, I changed the way that I do overhead extensions, and I changed the way that I do close grip bench press. So even like when I'm doing overhead extensions, I don't just stay like right here. I kind of slightly, it's like a 90% tricep extension with like a 10% shoulder press involved into it because I'm allowing, again, this elbow, this humerus bone to come down. And when I'm coming up, I'm trying to truly just engage up as hard as I can, contracting that tricep. So, yeah, there is
Mhm.
going to be some shoulder engagement into it, and it does turn it into a compound movement. But I also feel like you're getting more overall muscle recruitment doing that. And you're also strengthening your joints and your tendons at the same time.
Mhm. Yeah, because that tricep does go up into the backside of the shoulder. So getting that shoulder involved is going to maximize
Yeah, you're
all of
engaging more
all of the
muscle.
things
Yeah.
that you just talked about.
Yeah, and that's something that I just feel like a lot of people they'll do five different movements, but all you're doing is an elbow hinge movement. That's it. So it's like you're just doing the same five things in a different format. I mean, yes, there's lengthened and then there's shortened position, there's full range, but I still think you're going to have to get that shoulder and that scapula moving a little bit if you really want to truly build the biggest triceps you possibly can. I mean, if you
Mhm.
look at power lifters in general, a lot of them don't do direct tricep work. They bench press. They got pretty good triceps too. But think about that bench press. It's going down here, well, powerlifters a little bit more tucked in. Still, like it is going through that range of motion. And then when they're driving up with it, that's kind of what I'm getting at with that elbow
Mhm.
attaching, or sorry,
Yeah.
that tricep attaching into the shoulder and the scapula movement.
Mhm. Yeah, you know what's funny, Justin, is there was an old school bodybuilder that he's like in his 70s now that I used to see at the Power Shack gym over here. and I would do skull crushers all the time, but I would do them like how you're describing, where the shoulder blade comes with it and you can really squeeze the tricep. And I
Yeah.
remember he told me, he's like, you won't be able to do those because he's like, that's what tore up my elbow. And that's kind of when I would see that. I was like, oh, he's so strict with the hinge that like no wonder why he just like eroded his elbow. But like, when I was at Westside, you would see those guys handle that weight and like you would see them moving all of that stuff. And then and then you feel a much better training sensation.
Yeah. Yeah, you're overall recruiting more muscle tissue doing that. So I don't know why you wouldn't do it that.
Yeah.
Certainly. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to just kind of walk through because you laid out this is perfect. So you laid out the programming for us. So essentially, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this stuff, right? But I kind of want to understand it because I think it's very useful to understand how you programmed your stuff so that other people can learn how to do that maybe aren't bodybuilders, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So so you're saying that you're going to start off full range of motion to begin with. So you're going to take a preacher curl. You preferred the preacher curl machine or the cable? Which one was it?
I personally like the machine or a barbell, like a
Okay,
very
so
strict barbell curl. But if I have a good preacher curl machine at my disposal, that's usually going to be my startup. It seems to be the easiest on my joints, and it's very easy to control as well. Like I don't overextend. I don't, I'm not going to say. I feel like I have very minimal chance of an injury starting with that. Versus, I feel like if you started with like an incline dumbbell curl from that lengthened position, I feel like that's going to increase your chance of injury by starting with that move.
right. So essentially, if you think about it, so let's think about it from like the nervous system's perspective. So your nervous system is what is recruiting the muscle tissue to do work.
Mm.
So you're essentially to start the program, what you're doing is you're going to do the preacher curl. It's going to be full range of motion. It's going to be strict form like you just described. So it's strict form where like you're actually using the bicep to do the preacher curl. You're not lifting the weight of doing the preacher curl, which is like a
Yeah.
huge nuanced thing that I think you did a good job of articulating. But then what you're going to do is you're going to do like a 12 to 15, and then you're going to do a couple sets there. And you're saying that how you knew when you were done is the concentric, the lifting up part of the curl, when you were able to hold into that tissue and then lower down and feel the entire anatomy of that tissue come to length. And then when you would try to come up again, you just couldn't move the weight anymore with that amount of intention into the bicep. You terminated it.
Yeah. The one thing
Okay.
I do want to point out is because I didn't go into enough depth on this when it comes to like actually warming up. When I do like I said I'll do like 3 to 5 warm-ups. Let's just say like for example, the machine that I'm currently using at the gym that I go to, I've been going to 130 pounds on the preacher curl. I don't know what that is and real weight, but that's the machine's weight. So I will
What is the
start.
machine? What is the machine?
I don't even know the brand name of it. I can take a picture of it tomorrow.
Okay.
I can show it to you.
Okay.
I don't even know
Yeah.
the brand name of it. It's
Yeah.
he's got some mixed and match. I mean, there's some old hammer strength, there's some old Nautilus stuff in there. Like there's some Cybex stuff, and I think it's a Cybex machine, if I'm not
That's
mistaken.
what I was. Yeah, the white Cybex machine that kind of has the handles that both turn.
Yeah, yeah, the handles do turn on. Yep.
Yeah, it's the Cybex.
So
Okay, I got you.
I start with that, and like I'll do like 70 for like 12 to 15,
Okay.
and then I'll bump it up to 90, and I'll do around 8. And then I'll bump it to 110, and I'm only going to do around 5 or 6. So what I'm actually doing is I'm trying to prime my nervous system to be able to handle the weight that I'm going to use
Mm-hmm.
while warming up, but not burning out before I get
Mm-hmm.
to the real weight. So I'm not doing 70 for 15, 90 for 15,
Mm-hmm.
110 for 15, because now I've kind of pre-exhausted the muscle before I even get to a real working weight. So
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I needed to explain that and toss that out there as well. Because I see
No,
so
that's
many people, they pyramid, they'll put like a plate for 10, 2 plates for 10, 3 plates for 10, and 365 for 10. That's 405 for 8. I'm like, if you would have done that warm up a little bit differently, 405 for 8 probably would have turned into 12 or 13. and you still would have
Yeah.
been perfectly safe. You just literally burned yourself out before you got to that. So, from a bodybuilding and a powerlifting perspective, both of that, or for both of those sports, that's not ideal. And quite frankly, I don't think it's ideal for any sport that, for that matter. I mean,
Sure.
everything is about, or like maximum human performance whenever we're talking about sports. And we're trying to get the most out of our body with this. We're not trying to just essentially spin our wheels and say we had a good time and it felt good in the gym today and we got our sweat on. If you're trying to actually improve yourself, you're going to have to exert yourself.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Okay, so this is phenomenal. So what you're saying is you didn't want to burn your nervous system out. You wanted to use your nervous system to burn your bicep.
Correct. Yeah, I'm priming it to kind of get ready for what's about to come.
And so then it starts with full range of motion. Then on the last rep, that last rep, you're showing your nervous system, you're squeezing all of that tissue. You can
Yeah.
feel the tissue going to length. So now you feel the entire your nervous system knows the entire anatomy of the muscle. And then you're saying and that it is a Nautilus machine. This machine is a Nautilus one.
That's
I
not
know
listen.
because
They make an old one, yeah, and it's really really good.
okay, so then you're saying so now so after you do full range of motion, because from a programming perspective, you're walking us through the anatomy of the bicep, and you're saying I'm going to go from full range of motion to then short range of motion. And so,
Hmm.
and then that's when you do the short range of motion where it's like continuous tension to a degree, but you're just doing short range of motion.
Yeah.
What's the walk us through like the loading parameters, like how you walked us through like how you're saying you're priming it. Are you priming it there? Or are you just going to start to train tissue?
No, at that point, you've already done a full range of motion. You've taken everything to failure. You should be about as warmed up as you're going to be at that point. If you've done 3 working sets, my plus your warm ups on top of that, you should be warmed up enough that you shouldn't need to be warming up on other movements.
So you're talking
Right. So now,
about okay.
so you're right into it.
Yeah. Yeah. So like whenever I move into that machine, if this is your first time doing the workout, you may not know the right weight that your body needs. So you may end up going in and going either too heavy. Don't do that. I'd rather you go too light the first time, is to take the potential chance of an injury. So like pick a weight, maybe you do 15, 18 reps. The thing is, the way I would do this is like if I had a client in front of me and I'm like, okay, I clearly selected too light a weight. And this guy's stronger than what I think. I would say, okay, you're not stopping at 15. You're going to fail. Go to 20. Keep going until you fail. That's going to be the first set. But then I'm going to say, now next week when you're in here on your own doing this, instead of doing 80 pounds on this, I want you to go all the way to 120, 130. You're clearly strong enough to handle it. You're going to go up in weight at that point. And once you're getting like reps within your range, this is when the progressive overload comes into play. So I don't typically do anything more than 15, like with intention, anyways. Like, yes, like I said, if I pick a weight and it's too light for me, I'm not gonna just stop mid set and be like, you know what, I'm gonna hang out, or I'm not just gonna do 15, but well, I got my 15, that's it. No, nope. I'm probably gonna just push it to 15 to 20, whatever I fail at. And then I'll just know for future reference when I use that machine, you need a little bit more weight on that machine.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Hmm.
generally speaking, I won't go below 8 and I don't like to go above 15. I like to keep it within that range. If I'm getting up to 15 reps, I need to go up in weight. If I can't get 8 reps, that means your ego's kicking in a little too much and you need to go down in weight.
Are you talking about, is this also true for the preacher curl, or are you just talking about the shortened position bicep? This one,
All of it. All of
all of
it.
it.
Across the
Okay.
board, yes.
Okay. Okay. So when you said 3 working sets, you're talking about 3 working sets where you're trying to get 8 to 15.
Yes.
Okay. And that's
So,
the
like for
bicep.
example, yeah, like so for example, on my first set, I may get hypothetically, let's say we got 100 pounds and I do 13 reps and I failure. If you actually hit failure, you can't replicate that same set again, like 2 or 3 minutes later. So I may keep the weight, and then the next set may be 10, and then I've hit failure at 10. Well, when I get to that third set, it's probably going to be in the 7 to 8 range. Now, if you start with your working set and you're getting 7 to 8, and that's your first working set, then you're going to need to lower that weight back because it's only going to go down from there. It's going to
Hmm.
continue to get heavier.
So your failure point on the what I would like to point out first of all is that in this discussion so far, the uh the amount of feedback loops that you create is really important to kind of point out. Like everything is take in the information and then use that information for something in the future, which is essentially what feedback mechanisms are. But you're
Yeah.
now discussing using feedback from set to set, like immediate feedback. Like that set felt like I only got to this and it felt like this. So on the next one, I may have to change something.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, for example, a few weeks ago, this happened to me. And I wouldn't say that my ego got the best of me. It was more so that I was just having a really good day mentally and physically. I was doing hack squats and I said, and I feel good. I'm gonna throw another plate on today. Like I got this. Oh, but I didn't have it. I crawled out of it. I got stuck at the bottom and I had to crawl out of it after 5 reps. And I had to then take all the weight off in order to get the machine back up. And now, why would I replicate that same thing again? Right. So I'm like, okay, you need to back a couple of plates off. You're still going to get your volume in. You're still going to do a couple more sets here, but you're not going to be stupid and you're not going to let your ego get away from you. You're going to back the weight off and you're going to do this the right way. So, I mean, I do use like the feedback on the first set. I immediately transferred that over into the second set as to what should or should not happen next.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Which is great because like a lot of like, I'll speak for some of the athletes that I'll see in the clinic. They'll come in with a program that has been designed by maybe their strength coach or someone else, and it's like just so hard. This is the set, these are the reps, this is the weight, and there's no like, and so what ends up
Yeah,
happening is you get into training where, to your point, the training isn't really achieving what they want the training to achieve because now either the weight is too heavy and they're ego lifting or it's too light and they're not getting what they want.
yeah,
And there's no feedback that occurs in there. So I think it's really, like, to me, that is a really important thing because in the clinic we work on feedback all the time. Like you have to let me know what this feels like. You have to let me know, like, if I don't see the client for a week but they have a series of things to do because I've programmed that for them, like we'll follow up on email. Like you have to let me know what that means because I might have to change something even before the next time I see you.
yeah.
And so I think
Well,
that
that's the thing.
feedback
It's
is
like
really important.
when I tell my clients, like when I start that initial training program, it comes out to be anywhere between 2.5 pages up to maybe 6 or 7 pages long. Like if you were to print it out, like for their first training program, and that's why I tell them like I need your feedback on this. I don't want you to just go through the loops or just jump through the hoops and hope for the best. Like the more you tell me, the more I can help you.
Exactly. Yes.
And yeah, I'm sure people come in and be like, yeah, I got neck pain, but they don't tell you what's happening when they're not in the office.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that doesn't do you any good because you're gonna put a band-aid on the problem rather than being able to teach them how to kill it at the source.
That's right. That's right.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I just think feedback is such an important thing that it, like, we're talking about it because we all like know about it, but it, like, to a lot of folks it's not something
yeah,
that really resonates.
By the
yeah,
way, I wanted to
just
ask you, you said you're in the Toronto area, right?
Yeah,
And do you work on a lot of bodybuilders in that area?
I do not. No, I do not.
Do you want to?
Sure.
I was gonna say I actually have quite a few clients. I was supposed as of right now, I'm still supposed to be coming to the Toronto Pro.
Okay.
I've run into a dilemma. I don't know how long this dilemma is going to take, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to make the trip or not. I'm a little bit scared to book the insurance. You guys won't be able to see it in the video, but like I'm good at two things. I'm good at bodybuilding, and I'm really good at fishing. And I love fishing. Unfortunately, fishing involves the sun, and I do have a spot right here now. It's skin cancer. So I got to start that treatment probably in June to go ahead and get rid of that. And I don't know,
Okay.
my dad has the same issue as well, and he's had it since he's about 35, 38 years old. So like I'm kind of picked up on it. Sometimes they go in and they just take a scalpel and they cut it off, and sometimes he's got to do like 30 days like a radiation treatment. So I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
what it is, and I'm a little weary of committing to coming to that show. Otherwise, I would just come up there and I would see myself in the office because I really wanted to go to that show and I wanted to spend like 5 days in Toronto.
Okay, okay. When is
Toronto is
it?
actually the only city, I hate to say this, Toronto is the only city in Canada that I truly actually enjoyed.
That what?
So Toronto is the only city in Canada that I've actually enjoyed.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, I mean,
Um, I've
it's
never
it's
been to
the
Montreal, so I can't say I've wanted to go to Montreal, and I've wanted to go out to Kelowna. Just
okay,
haven't made it there yet.
okay, okay, okay.
But of all the ones I visited in Ontario, Alberta, and Nova Scotia, I was not impressed.
Well,
The people was great. I have nothing negative to say about Canadians at all. But
yeah,
like the I guess just the layout of it, I just wasn't satisfied. Toronto had stuff to do. It had like a fun vibe to it.
yeah. It's a good city for sure. It's a good city. It's the biggest one we got. So
Yeah.
Okay, so you got three working sets of 8 to 10 in the shortened position, but then
Yep.
it's going to go to the tissue lengthened position. Is it
Mhm.
three working sets again with the same bit of logic where it's like 8 to 10 because the tissue's out length, so it's going to be kind of more dangerous to the tissue. It's not really dangerous per se, but you're taking it's more stimulating for the tissue taking it to length.
Okay, so remember how we were talking about volume to try to figure out like how much someone can be able to take? That we have to go back to that because again, some people may be doing one working set while other people may be able to handle 4 to 5. And again, 3 seems to be my sweet spot with it. But yes, on that particular movement, 8 to 10, I don't really want you going heavier than that.
Okay, so you don't want more than 8 to 10. Okay, the reason why I'm going
No,
through this,
sorry. Hang on. I don't want you. You can do more reps. Like if you want to do in a 12 to 15 range, that's fine too. When I say heavier, I didn't. I meant like I didn't want you to use more weight and be doing like 4 to 6.
right? Okay, the reason why I'm saying this or I'm going through this is to kind of show people like the constraints that you're putting in from programming. So you're putting in loading constraints, you're putting in volume constraints. Shivers has come in and showed how like those constraints are actually feedback loops, and those feedback loops are actually dictating what you do in real time, right? And so
Yes.
it's just so that because like I think it's like a lot of this stuff is like coasted over, right? But there's so much nuance within here that like that's kind of like the nitty gritty that we wanted to get into with you. Okay,
Yeah, I
so
feel like a lot of people they need to be. They don't necessarily need to be these super science based, like what we see the kids on Instagram doing. But a lot of people do need to actually put a little bit of time, a little bit of effort, and a little bit of knowledge into their training, rather than just going to the gym and just going through the motion. They didn't know why they're doing it. And I feel like if they know why they're doing it, the intent is going to get greater.
mhm,
certainly. hmm Rather
mhm.
than just,
Okay,
and on the programming side, that's that's more ideal than just giving someone a list of exercises,
Yes.
which is what we see a lot of.
Yeah. Yeah. You definitely see a lot of that because it's easy for trainers to do that.
Certainly.
Like it's really easy to cut and paste. And when you see people that have like 3 to 500 clients, I actually know one person. The only reason I'm going to defend him is because I know him again on a personal level. He has between 3 to 500 clients at almost every time. But I will tell you, trying to reach him is harder than trying to reach the president because he literally works 16 to 18 hours a day, 7 days a week to be able to handle that much load. Me personally, I'm cool with taking less money and sticking with 100 clients because I can comfortably work with them. I can answer their questions, and at the same time, my blood pressure is not going crazy.
And you can go fishing.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like a lot of my clients don't know it. They're like they're checking in with me, and I'll hear like ding, 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 ding on my phone. That's usually when those multiple dings, it's pictures coming through. And meanwhile, we're sitting here, we got a tuna on, or we got something like, okay, I'll get to them in about 15 minutes once this fish comes in. So like, yeah, there's times that like they don't know it, but I'm out on the water whenever they're checking in with me.
Hey, the work is still getting done though.
That's
Yep.
right.
I thought about buying the new Starlink system, but I feel like here in a couple of years we won't it'll be obsolete.
Oh, okay. Okay. Where are you fishing at? Are you fishing because you're in Florida? Are you in the ocean?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't do anything freshwater.
Okay. Okay.
I strictly do saltwater only.
Okay. Okay. So you're through the bicep at this point. So we got full range of motion of the tissue, short range of motion of the tissue, long range of motion of the tissue. At this point, those are the three exercises that you've programmed. At this point, that's when you go, okay, well, that's the bicep. And then you walk us through like essentially the reasons why you selected for there to be a dumbbell hammer curl,
Yeah.
which and now dumbbell hammer curl, like you said, is like brachialis. It's more elbow flexor than like just say strictly bicep.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, so what do we like what's kind of the constraints of that? Like is it the same like I understand like now I think everybody understands like the volume is what the volume is, right? Like some people can do more or what sets like you
Yeah.
want a very specific outcome of the set. But does it change when you now move more into elbow flexor?
No, I try to keep it the same. That being said, this is coming from my own personal experience because I can't feel what you feel and other people can't feel what other people feel. If I feel like I have completely just spent myself on the first three, and like right now I'm dieting, if you look at my face, it's pretty sunken in compared to usual. I sometimes don't have the energy to get through, another 3 or 6 sets. I may only do one or two because of like I don't feel the muscle working. I still want to hit it with that at least one solid hard working set to be able to recruit like that range of motion, specifically that range to target those muscles. But if I'm at the point where it's like my central nervous system, I'm fried. I have no gas left in the tank. I may have to make an executive decision, just be like, you know what? This is your limit today. This like
Hmm.
today, this is your top out. You don't have like, you're not 25. You're not trying to mimic your 25-year-old days. You can't do this. You've got to listen to your body. Like when you've been training for 20 years, you know when enough is enough. And I don't know if I've really ever actually suffered rhabdomyolysis, but like I feel like I had to have been close at times in my life. And I don't want to get near that. I don't want anybody else to get near that either. But generally speaking, yes, if I have the energy and everything is good, and honestly, I think the biggest thing with being good with me is like if I can take between 2 to 3 minutes rest, that seems to be the sweet spot. It's like I don't get too burned out, but I'm also able to keep things flowing. And you'll see videos of me, like a couple that surfaced lately. I've been training with sunglasses and a hat on, and I look like a big giant douche canoe in the gym. And the only reason I do that is because like I am more than happy to sit down and have a conversation with people for the gym or after the gym. But like when I'm like actively mid set, like I'm literally 4 reps deep into a 10 rep set, and somebody's like, "Hey Justin, man, I have a quick question for you." You're gonna get a very snarky, shitty answer from me. And then it's like the people who they don't understand that like when you're in the gym, I'm in the gym with intention. Like this is not a social outlet for me. This is not a social setting for me. It can be, as a matter of fact, I have made some very excellent friends in the gym that I'm thankful for this day. But that being said, like if you want to ask me a quick question in between, that's fine. But like when you're taking 5 to 10 minutes to talk to me in between sets, now you're screwing with my intensity and it kind of alters the rest of my workout on how things go. So I've learned to just be like, you know what? You have to put yourself first and you have to sometimes you don't I have no desire to be a prick to people just to be a prick. Like I don't want to do that. I would love for the whole world to just love me, but that's not the world that we live in, right? So sometimes I'll tell people, I'm just like, hey man, I got to train, dude. Like, hit me up afterwards. And they never hit you up afterwards because they're offended that you cut them off. But they don't understand that, like, you're a recreational weightlifter. I'm a professional bodybuilder. You're trying to look like me. So what you should do is watch what I'm doing and mimic what I'm doing rather than trying to screw up what I'm doing by talking to me while I'm doing it. Like, there's Instagram DMs or Facebook DMs. Like, there's a couch, not a couch, but there's a whole line of chairs that oftentimes I'll just go before I leave and before I drive because I've killed myself. I'll just sit for 10 minutes. I'll literally just go over there and just sit by myself. You can talk to me, you can not talk to me. I could take it or leave it. But like, that's like the time. Like, if you want to have a full blown conversation, if you want me to explain this, explain that, I'll go over everything from why you should cook your chicken to a certain temperature all the way to, explain how to do a tibia raise if that's what you want to hear. But like, again, when I'm doing shoulder press and I've got three plates per side on a shoulder press, and you come up to me and say, how much weight is this? While I'm actively pressing it, you're not going to have a nice response. It's just not going to happen. And we're not going to be friends after that either. Like, you got to learn some gym etiquette. But like, those type of people, they mean well, they don't mean anything bad. And I usually try to explain to them, like, hey man, I have to work out. Even though I'm not competing, this is still my passion. This is what I'm doing. And if you want results like this, you need to do this too. Because the only reason you're talking to me is because I have something that you want, whether it be knowledge or looks. You're not coming up to me, you're not asking me for money. You're not asking me to go change a tire on your vehicle because you got a flat in the parking lot. You're coming up to me because you want knowledge on a situation, or you're interested because I look a certain way. So I look a certain way and I have that knowledge because of what I'm doing. And if you're going to interrupt what I'm doing, you're counterproductive to my goal. And I know that sounds like a big thing to say, but like, it's really not. Like, if you go up to any NFL football, okay, well, forget that. Since you've worked with top level fighters, you can't go up to Stipe while he's sparring and he's on the ground with somebody and be like, hey man, I'm just curious, why are you holding his elbow like this? No, like, he's actively doing his job right now. This is what he's doing. You talk to him afterwards on that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
For
true.
sure.
But yeah, a
Okay,
lot of
so
people just they don't understand that, and I think that's something that just kind of comes with time and wisdom of being in the gym. And I hate to say this, but I also think it comes with a few years of failure in the gym. And by failure, meaning not hitting your goals. And then I think people kind of come to terms, because I did when I was younger. I had to come to terms with, like, why is some people getting better results than me? And then I start watching their habits, and I'm like, oh, that's probably why. They're not going out and partying. They're not going out and drinking. They're not eating junk food. And when they're in between sets, you don't see, like, you don't see the phone. You see like that laser, like they're just zoned in. And I started watching the people that was more successful than me. And I learned how to put my mind in the right place in the gym. Because ultimately, to be, I know not every, I know a lot of the listeners are not like hardcore bodybuilders, but in order to be a hardcore bodybuilder, you almost have to go to the gym and you have to look at it like war. It's you versus the weights. No, there's nobody getting killed. There's no blood and guts, but it is war between you and the weights. And you have to be prepared to win that. And that's sometimes the mindset that I would have, and I still do, go in with. And some days it's not always as good as others. It's just like we roll out of bed some days and we're so energetic and so motivated, regardless of how we slept. And then there's other days we roll out of bed and it's like, yeah, it's a pajamas type of day and I'm taking on. And I have those days too, but I'm like, okay, I'll get in the gym parking lot and I'm like, you're here, fat boy. I was like, you're gonna get in there and you're gonna do what you gotta do. And like, I tell myself whatever I have to tell myself. Me and Dallas McCarver used to talk about this all the time, of like how we would like be like 3 weeks out from the show. And it's like, you got to tell yourself, like, this is what you're going to do, and there's nothing going to get in your way. No matter how tired you are, you're going to walk in there and you are going to do this shit. And sometimes your motivation, and that's something else that a lot of people really need to think about is, why are you doing what you're doing? Because motivation to grow a physique. I didn't say be a bodybuilder. I'm just going to use the word grow a physique because we all have different goals and different ambitions. You got to ask yourself why you're doing what you're doing, because if you're looking for other people for motivation, that is nothing more than a band-aid. That's a quick fix. That's nothing. That motivation that you have has to come from within. It has to come from deep down to be able to go in and train with that level of intensity and that much capacity. Because it's like, if you take the obese person and they watch all these little stupid motivational clips, maybe they'll go get a gym membership. Maybe they'll work out a couple times, but then they quit. They don't follow through with it. You take an obese person and they go to the doctor, and the doctor says, "Hey, you got high blood pressure, high cholesterol, you got high glucose, you got all this stuff going on." That may be the motivation that they need to say, this weight's got to go. Exercise is the key. We have to do this. So, whatever your motivation is, it has to come from you. And you have to understand why you're doing what you're doing. Because building a physique is not easy. I don't care if you want to build a runner's physique, you want to look like a Navy SEAL, you want to look like David Goggins, whether you want to look like Ronnie Coleman. It takes a lot of dedication and time. These physiques are not built by accident. So you have to ask yourself, what is your motivation and why are you doing this? And what's going to keep you doing this? What's going to keep you going? For me, I have body dysmorphia. It is what it is. No matter how big, like that picture of like me and Louie, if you would ask me at the time, "Hey, Justin, do you feel big?" I'd be like, "Feel average." You know, that was like, it kept me going. It kept me hungry. And deep down, I knew that too. I knew I was bigger than most people, but I didn't feel it. And I was like, you know what? Just let that feeling stay, because that feeling is what got you to where you're at right now. And it's the same thing with
Mm.
dieting too. You know, like when bodybuilders go through cutting phases and they diet for competitions, it's like I could get striated glutes, but I'm like, but this guy's better. You're not shredded enough. And that was like my motivation to just keep pushing more and more and more to be able to be the best that I could possibly be. Same rule applies to training, you know, because your training is ultimately, it is your number one step into changing your physique, whether it's weight, no matter what it is, whether it's weight loss, muscle building, you know, CrossFit, bodybuilding, powerlifting, Olympic lifting. It all starts in the gym. People say it starts in the kitchen. It doesn't start in the kitchen. It starts in the gym, because you can eat perfect. If you don't lift weights and you don't do some type of form of physical exercise, it doesn't matter what you eat. People want to look at PEDs. Sure. Yeah, that's part of the game too. Go take them. Take them all. Take every one that you want, as much as your wallet can afford. If your training's not there, it means nothing. So it all does start with the motivation as to why you're training, how you're training, and making sure that you're executing on that.
Hmm.
And
Let me,
consistency. You have to consistently be consistent.
Mhm.
yeah. So let me ask you a specific question. Because you were kind of discussing like when you and Dallas McCarver, you guys would joke about it when you were deep pre-contest. So like pre-contest, obviously like nutrition plays a role. So in regards to like you just are intaking less energy, but at the same time, like you're getting ready and you're trying to peak for how your physique looks, right?
Yeah.
In a bodybuilding show. So do you like were you able to delineate the difference between like when you said like you were fried, like in your nervous system, because you're trying to use your nervous system to build the tissue. But what you were saying is if my nervous system was fried, I would just maybe do one set to get the mechanical stimulus into the tissue. Like when it gets to the elbow flexors, when you were like, hey, like if when I get to the dumbbell, like I'm not gonna force the dumbbell hammer curls, right? You would do it based off of kind of like how you felt. So can you kind of like be specific with like I guess I don't know what the question is, but it's like there's a difference between like you're fatigued because you're at a nutritional deficit, or you're fatigued because your nervous system, like you've already given out so much intent and effort that there isn't much more to give from that nervous system. Does this make sense what I'm trying to ask?
I know what you're trying to ask, but it's going to be a very hard question to answer. But not only the answering part of it is, I think it's going to come down to a lot of people with their experience because a lot of people's not going to know the difference between um, like central nervous system fatigue and just simply, I hate to use the word malnutrition or malnourished, but like at the end of the day, as bodybuilders, we've got like four different foods in our plan and we're in a caloric deficit. We've been there for a while. So it's not the healthiest thing for us to do to try to achieve 4% body fat. And you are going to feel a little bit tired when you're doing that. So that's when it does have to come to a point where it's like, is my central nervous system and is my muscular system failed? Or am I just mentally gassed from the lack of calories per se? And for me, most of the time, it was lack of calories and not my actual body that was tiring, nor or not like
Mm,
the nervous system that was tiring.
okay. So let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a follow-up question. So you walked us through like the training for your bicep. Did you ever do anything that was like specific programming for your nervous system that you would consider like, hey, this is here to scale up my nervous system?
So that's kind of like yes and no. Probably not to what you're going to elaborate yourself here just in a second. But like, I was telling you about the warm-ups and stuff. So like
Yeah.
I was very deliberate and very intent with my warm-ups. So like the first couple of reps, I'm just kind of feeling it. But for the most part, I am squeezing, contracting hard. I'm going down. I'm making sure that I'm feeling everything. But again, I'm acclimating up in weight and going down in the reps as I'm warming up because I'm trying to prime my nervous system to be able to perform the way I want it to perform. Now, as far as being able to train my nervous system to be able to handle more weights, I'm actually going to put that ball back in your court on that because I want to see what your answer to that is because maybe I'm not thinking down the right lines. I don't know. Let's say I didn't specifically train my nervous system to handle a certain amount of volume.
Okay.
If I
So
did, I may have done it unintentionally and I was unaware of it.
okay. So let me see. Yeah, okay. So Louis Simmons from West Side Barbell essentially took the Soviet methods. So like the Soviet Union in the sport of Olympic weightlifting, they had four methods. They had the max effort method, they had the dynamic effort method, they had the repeated effort method, and the repeated effort method to failure. Okay. So like at Westside, they would extensively utilize essentially max effort and dynamic effort and what those do. And so like what a max effort session would be like you do one rep. So you take a training max, which is very much like powerlifting. So that's why like powerlifting is going to be more neurological because it's scaling up the nervous system. Whereas bodybuilding would be considered like repeated efforts if you use the Soviet lens, if this makes
Yeah.
sense, right? So uh so like what I would consider, and so but here's a nuance, right? So most powerlifters are going to use max effort and dynamic effort. So what they're going to do, I'll just kind of walk through what that programming would look like. Because think about it, like the sport is different. If you're Olympic weightlifting or you're a powerlifter, like you're still using the same outlet as of training, but your programming is completely different because you're programming now for a lift. That's why like Louis Simmons would be obsessed with numbers, whereas like the numbers you would be obsessed with would be more the mirror than
Yeah.
anything, right?
Yes.
Because it's a physique sport. So, and that changes the programming demand. So, but this is what would happen is so if you use max effort method, then you would do what's called a training max. So you would pick whatever, and a lot of this stuff is self selected. So, like if you're a power lifter, like it would be like a bench press, let's say, or a squat or a deadlift, and you would do a training max. And that training max is you're trying to use load, right? So you're trying to use a maximal load so that it compresses your nervous system so you can only do one rep, right? Because that's the sport, right? But the
Yeah.
problem is with that, when you do one rep, you start to get slower. So what the Soviets would do was they would take a percentage of that and then they would move it at speed. So now you're trying to scale up the nervous system and then give the nervous system to output faster, right? And so like when I say nervous system, like were you incorporating like any of that type stuff? But
No.
okay, because let me say one thing that a lot of people that follow the old Soviet model, which is like science and practice of strength training, there's a nuance when you're in repeated efforts. Okay, because what you were describing is you elicit your maximal momentary effort, but it was after multiple efforts. So when you describe like the parameters that you use, where you're like, I brought it up, I can squeeze the tissue, and then I can come down, and then I can't do any more. You're trying to elicit your maximal momentary effort. It's just after multiple efforts or repetitions, so that you get the correct amount of mechanical tension that then it allows the nervous system to scale up muscle tissue.
Yes. So one thing that I did do, kind of down those lines, is it's not. But again, I just want to touch on something because you were talking about being speed. I most movements I tried to do like a very slow eccentric, like 3 4 seconds, and then I would explode on my contraction, my concentric movement. Like that was a part of my reps. Like I made very sure I never really was one to just sit here and just move the weight. It was more like a nice slow down and then boom, I'm contracting up hard with it.
Okay, it's funny that you say that because you've met Mike Francois before, right? He trained
Yes.
at this metro that you okay. So I trained with Francois, and it's funny, he trained, kind of in the day with Dorian. And I
Yeah.
remember when I first started training him or training with him, he would always tell me, like, hey, do a fast concentric, and then you would kind of hold into the tissue and then a slow eccentric. So it's kind of funny, like when you take those methods that I just discussed, it's kind of like do a dynamic effort rep to get your fast twitch muscle fibers to come on, right? Then use that to do the work, right? Not with cheating, right? But obviously, like generating enough mechanical tension to use the load, then hold into the tissue and then just control that tissue coming to length, right? And I feel
That's
like
kind of how I train. Yeah.
yeah, and so like I've noticed this, and I'll tell you where I noticed this at is it's funny, it's the lat pull down. Like if I watch people, like I'm not judging people at the gym, but like, you're at the gym, so you're seeing how, like I'll see like this is why this guy's physique's never changed because when he gets to this part, he just stops. Because I'll be doing I'm not doing the stair mill, but right, like because you told me like, hey, chill out on the stair mill. But when I would be looking around, right? And I would be like, oh, like that's the part where he needs to really push himself, but now he's going to stop on the leg extension. And that makes sense because I've seen that guy for like 3 years and his quads haven't
The
changed.
same. Yeah.
Okay. So like you just noticed that. But getting back to this specific part of how the repetition is performed on lat pull downs. Like if you think about a lat pull down, people will pull it down fast, but they almost like hold it into their lats and then they do this like nice slow eccentric to a large degree. Like a lot of bodybuilders that have big lats, I've noticed that's how they've trained them. But I'm like, that's interesting because the execution of that repetition is kind of how I've always tried to do stuff,
Yeah.
right? And I feel like every bodybuilder that you talk to, they kind of describe this without really like defining that nuance, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
right?
So what
This
so
is,
so what do you so what are you saying then? Are you saying that there's like some element of uh the methods in the training of bodybuilding without actually specifically delineating them as those methods?
yeah. So like, and it's hard because like I have that background at Westside where it's like much more Soviet than it is Western, right? So like those methods, so like everything, if you have that lens, like everything that Justin has told us is in the repeated efforts method, which makes sense because that's how you build tissue. You need repeated efforts to build the tissue. You need, like he's talking about, progressive overload. Like this is
Sure, sure.
all falls down that line, right? But like hidden within that, when he described, and that's why I wanted to like get him to say this because I figured that that's what he would say is he's like, yeah, I'm like trying to use my fast twitch fibers to bring it up because those are the muscles that produce the largest amount of force and scale up the fastest, right? And then he's holding into that tissue. Then he's taking the connective tissue to length. and the length in the connective tissue, taking connective tissue to length under load, as we know, is very stimulatory to create more length within the tissue, which then allows more muscle tissue to get laid down in that tissue, right? And so like, but these are like the hardline constraints, the programming constraints that he has in his head that's common knowledge to him and common sense to him, or it's common sense to him but not common knowledge to most people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
Say, like for instance, like I asked him about but Francois told me to perform repetitions in the same way that Justin described, for how he would say, like, listen, I want you to perform the repetitions this way. And when you think about one rep, so if you take those methods and you think about one rep, he's trying to dynamic, like, because the load. So Justin, one of the other things that the Soviets did is they graded out resistance. Okay, because they're in the sport of Olympic weightlifting,
Mhm.
right? And so what they would say is like, if you could do 19 to 25 reps, that's lightweight. If you could do anything over 25, that's very light. If you could do one rep, that's maximal load. If you could do 2 to 3, that's submaximal. If you could do 4 to 7, that's heavyweight. If you could do 8 to 12, that's moderately heavyweight. So think
Yeah.
about what, so when you start to combine that, like what the Soviets were doing for Olympic weightlifting, and you layer over what you were doing with bodybuilding, you were essentially using like heavy to moderately heavy weight and taking the tissue to like momentary failure. And you're like, yeah, if you just do this, I mean, it seems simple, right? But
Yeah.
but it's kind of funny how like everybody's kind of arrived at that logic without, I guess, like you've defined it, but I guess like that definition, like the reason why you're defining it is because it's not common knowledge, and people are like, oh well, if I do, because, and that's why I was kind of trying to press to be like, so should I do 3 sets? And you're like, no, you shouldn't do 3 sets. And you were describing how you program essentially your training in real time. You're not
Yeah.
just this. I know I've
Yeah.
probably rambled on for too long, right? But it's just more reinforcement for people that are watching this that maybe have a background in West Side or they have a powerlifting background, to show them that, like, listen, you're using repeated efforts. And then the last repetition, you're saying you need to elicit your maximal momentary effort. And that effort should be funneled and constrained into the tissue you are trying to stimulate, right? And so I think I just find that very, from my perspective, it's reassuring, right? Because like that's how I try to train to a degree when I'm doing like bodybuilding training, right? But it's
Yeah.
kind of it's interesting how all the top, because like if you think about Francois, like you won Arnold Asia, well, he
We
won an
won
Arnold too.
Columbus.
He
Yeah,
won
but he was a little
Columbus.
bit better than me.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, but it's the same thing. It's funny how like talking to the two of you, right? You're both discussing like, oh, if you had to like if you coached me on how to execute that rep, it would be almost the same as him.
Yeah. That's interesting. I've never actually, I would actually love to work out with Mike sometime if I ever get the opportunity.
Yeah, because I trained with him. He did my nutrition, because I trained with Meadows for a long time.
Yep, I knew that.
John Meadows and I trained for a long time, and then I went to West Side, and so I was kind of, and that's where I got exposed to not just bodybuilding training, but all the strength training, which I mean by like those, like the intent was completely different, right? Their intent is like, I don't really care what I look like. I just need to have to move a barbell from point A to point B, and the load has to be that, right? And so like as you're working, so you could see where like the programming of the training was completely different, right? But then obviously like talking with Louis, and then like Louis would convince me like, hey, you should try to do some dynamic effort. Hey, you should try to do certain like other things, but that was for the nervous system. Like
Yeah.
that's all, right? That's why like Louis would be like, well, how is Justin so, like, how is he so big? Well, it's because like Louis was putting his max efforts into the barbell, but you were putting your max efforts at like the correct time into the muscle tissue.
Yeah. Yeah. Big difference in the way that we trained. And also, like, I think the variety, like between a powerlifter and a bodybuilder, I mean, because powerlifters, in my opinion, don't really train full body. They don't have to train full body, but I actually think if you look at a lot of the powerlifters that do train all the accessory work, those are usually your more successful powerlifters as well.
Correct. For sure.
And
For
I
sure.
never actually watched Louis train. I just know that there's been shitloads of champions produced out of that gym. So they're doing something right with it.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. So you walked us through the bicep training. Okay, we go preacher curl into then shorten range, into then lengthen range, and then elbow flexors. Would you ever do the elbow flexors before the preacher? Like, did you ever flip it?
You technically could. I don't see that there would be anything wrong with doing it like that. I personally think it may feel a little awkward starting with like a hammer curl or a reverse curl. I haven't done it in a very long time, but I think consistency would be your key on this. So, like, if that's what you want to do, then start with it because may other people it may feel better to start with that. And if it does, and if you are struggling and you're looking for brachialis, then I would start with that very specifically because that's when you're going to be fresh. That's when you're going to be able to exert your maximum effort is on those first couple of sets. So if that's the targeted goal, I mean, it's like the same concept would apply of like, let me think of an example here. If you're training back, do you want to target your rhomboids more? Do you want to target your lats more? So it's going to depend on which exercise you're going to pick as your opening exercise for which one's going to get the most engagement. So I would see no problem with starting with an elbow flexor movement. I don't think that would be an issue, but I do like to program things to where we are trying to train consistently from one week to the next. That way we're monitoring progress within. Because like if you're getting 50 pounds times 10 reps this week, and then I increased your food, your body weight went up, but you only got 7 this next week, something's not adding up with that. Could be your sleep's off, it could be multiple things off, but if I'm starting to see that trend across the board, we got a problem that has to be diagnosed and addressed.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
I got you.
So I do like the consistency to be able to stick to the same style of workouts. Like I wouldn't want you to do, well, we're not going to start with barbell curl today, and the next week we're going to come in and we're going to start with hammer curl, and then the following week we're going to come in and start with length and range. No, I do like to be very consistent with that.
Hmm. Because it's disrupting the feedback loop that Chivers was kind
Yeah.
of talking about. Right. I got you. I mean that yeah, everything makes
Yeah, so
sense. And
like
that's
if someone wanted to start out with an elbow flexor, I don't see any problem with that. But like understand that like if that's your goal is to build and work on that area, it's not going to happen in one workout anyways. So consistently stay with that style of training or with
Hmm.
Mhm.
that orientation of exercises, I guess I should say.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's true in the clinical treatment setting as well.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like you want to have like actual like iterations of feedback loops so that you know like whether or not what you're doing is actually like changing the
Yeah, if it's
actual.
working or not working. Yeah, you need to be able to monitor progress.
Yeah,
Definitely.
exactly.
Hmm.
Okay, well, perfect. Okay, so Justin, we'll leave your information for people that want to work with you. But let us like where do people find like I'll leave your Instagram link and stuff like this, but where would people find you?
So just for general questions, hit me up on Instagram. My website, I'm gonna give that website here just momentarily. The website, because I do have people who inquiry to me on the website and it goes to an email and it's kind of like a loop system that sometimes I won't get that message for like 2 or 3 days. And I don't want to be the guy who responds 3 days later. I like to be the guy. I take pride in what I do with coaching. So like I hate when I hear clients come to me and they're like, oh, well, my last coach takes 4 to 5 days to respond. I'm like, that's not a coach, buddy. That's called somebody who just takes your money. That's literally what that's doing. So if you just have like a general question, go to my Instagram. It should be just Justin R. Compton, R being my middle initial. Or maybe I've got it set up now as IFBB Pro Compton. But if you type in Justin Compton, you'll find me. Like there's a couple of other Justins out there, but they don't have the following that I have. So like you'll find me there.
They probably don't
But
have
my
the
web
arms either.
probably not. Um, But then, as far as like actual coaching, if someone's interested in wanting to work with me, getting coached by me, it's going to be justincompton.biz.
.biz. Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I'll put that link down here. And then
Yeah.
Chivers, you have anything else you want to ask or say to Justin?
No, no, I thought this was super informative. I took lots of notes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, same thing. I mean, I'm glad we had this conversation with you just because like I just in like emailing back and forth, I kind of knew that this is how it was going to be, where you had these like specific constraints for loading, volume, and all of this was feedback, and that's how you're essentially adjusting the programming of people's training. And I think that in and of itself is huge for people to see.
Yeah.
Definitely.